Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conflict in a Peaceful Workplace with your presenter, Andrew Sanderberg. Andrew has been developing and conducting training seminars for libraries and library organizations for more than 15 years. He has presented web-based, online, and face-to-face sessions on management and leadership, customer service, and communication skills in the US and numerous countries around the world. He is an author of 2 books and over 50 webinars. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Vicki, and good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing well, and so glad that you take time to sharpen your skills and do some CE work here. So let's go ahead and we'll jump into our topic of the day. And if you have not printed out the handouts and you have the opportunity to do so, I hope that you will. It's a rather large pack of handouts for you today, and it'll give you a place to write some notes. Also, I've got some work in here where I want you guys to do some work as we're going through, and I'm just gonna kind of be quiet when that's happening. And an example of that is here. So the purpose of the session here is to give you a proven approach or approaches that you can use whenever and wherever conflict is arising. And so that's the purpose that I built this material around. And for you guys, I want you to take a moment, and if you would, just write down what's your purpose for this session. So what is it that you want to get out of this session? What's your purpose? I am gonna go ahead and mute out for just about a minute and give you a chance to write down your thoughts. I'm a big believer that if you do come to the session with a purpose, that you have a very good chance of achieving that purpose. And if you came to the session with no purpose, I don't know what you might achieve. So let's take a minute and I'll be back. And I see that Kathy has put hers in the chat area. If you would like to do that as well, that's great. That's totally up to you if you want to share your purpose or not. So better managing issues that arise, learning how to manage conflict and not just avoid it. Some practical tips. Yeah, Lauren, I'm much more into practical tips than theory. I just don't really see value in teaching theory unless you can show application. So I'm into practical, useful, you know, let's do it now type things. So good to see. And I think I'm going to go ahead, and our minute's up. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump into it here. You know, kind of review-ish here. Conflict is normal. Conflict is going to happen. I think there are many times, depending on how we approach conflict, it actually can be quite healthy. You know, people are different. We have different expectations. We have different perceptions. And because of that, we can see situations differently. We can have disagreements about different things. And certainly a great tool to learn are some of these conflict resolution skills. One of the things that I love about a lot of the topics that I get to teach is that not only can you use these skills in the workplace, but you can also use them in all areas of life. So I really hope that some of the things that we talk about today, you can also look and see about how you can use them with your family, with your friends, at the grocery store, you know, wherever that may be. So conflict comes from differences. And I really like that as a baseline. It's looking at just, people see it differently, they feel differently, and it can be that they value something differently than I may. They could have a different idea about something. They could have a different desired outcome. As I mentioned before, perceptions and bias play a big part in this. We all have our own biases about things, and certainly motivation as well. So, we can look at all of these things, but I like to go back to that when there's a conflict, I just say, you know what, they're seeing it differently. And depending how much energy and emotion they have behind that, could really determine, what level of conflict we are dealing with. I like to try to de-emotionalize things as much as possible in these situations. And so that's why I go to, they see it differently. I'm looking at it differently than they are. So then, how can we kind of build some common ground here? And I'll get into the notes a little bit later, but I certainly think part of it is going to be our listening skills with this. So your ability to stay calm, your ability to really how you're going to handle this situation. So, part of this, I want you to kind of reflect on yourself, your ability to control your emotions in these situations, what your behavior looks like, paying attention to not only the feelings that are being expressed, but as well as what are the words that are being said. Because many times the words can be triggers for us, and we can lose some of that emotional control based on a trigger word. And so I think it's really important for us to understand what some of our own trigger words may be with that. And, just how are you managing the stress of these situations? Because they can be very stressful. And how is it that you're able to keep yourself calm, maybe even when you're not feeling calm? And then I'll go back to the differences thing again here as well. You can have a difference of opinion, and it could be extremely different than mine, but I can still give you that space of respecting that difference of opinion. It's kind of like Covey in 7 Habits when he talks about listening skills and seeking first to understand and then to be understood. I can seek first to understand you, but not agree with you. And that starts, I think, to kind of build a bridge, and it actually may help to kind of de-escalate some of the conflict because you see that I am giving you that space. And I'll talk a little bit more about Covey as we kind of go through the material here. But, once again, you're going to have a different view. I'm going to have a different view. We could be having a meeting of 10 people, and 10 people could have different views. And I really do believe it's how we manage that is going to determine just the level of conflict that we have going on. And I saw the comment in the chat area about COVID, and I totally agree. I think people are much more easily triggered. I think they're much more on edge. And I put some of that on the fact that that people just, they have lost their sense of normalcy. There's nothing that seems normal. There's still too much uncertainty. There's still too many unknowns, and people are really struggling. I'm in the process of finishing up a book called the little book of professional customer service. And one of the things that I'm really highlighting in there is just how difficult it is with people mental health wise with everything that's going on with COVID, and how, my routine is gone, my habits are gone, and it's requiring me to make many more decisions. It's requiring me to have to adjust, and it's a struggle for many people. So, all right, in your notes, if you've got the notes open on page 3, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to go ahead and answer those questions. So I want you to look at key sources of conflict. When are they occurring? How are people responding? and how are we solving the problems? So I'll give you a couple minutes and I'll be back, and we will take a look at some different ways to look at those key sources of conflict that you have going on. So please take your time with those questions, and make sure you fill out that sheet, because it's going to be important for you to have that as we go through. I'm looking at Jennifer's comment in the chat here with regards to staff stress level being about the same, but the patrons certainly seem to be more stressed. And her comment here about is the nature of our work giving us more resilience. And, you know, I looked at that, and the first thing that came to mind, and it's good to see Jennifer, I haven't talked with her in a while, is that I wonder if part of it is that when we're at work, we're in character. And, you know, being in character means that we're probably more aware of our behavior. And so maybe we aren't responding as much as if we just were the customer in that situation. So an interesting thought, because I really do believe that whenever we come into work that we are in character, you know, and my character could be the circ desk person or the supervisor or whatever position or role, you know, that we're in at that time. But an interesting thought. And I think we do need to be aware of just, you know, the stress level of our coworkers. I'm a big believer that some days are better than others. And, you know, some days the stress level's higher, and some of them, you know, are maybe not so much. Especially too, with COVID, so much has changed for us at home with regards to, you know, if you have aging parents or children, or, you know, we could go through that list there. Okay, so I hope you're able to fill out the questionnaire and that you have that going forward as we take a look at the information here. I wanted to do a little bit, and this is on page 4 in your handouts, just on being, you know, the more of the nonverbal here, but just being aware of some of the signs and triggers of someone that could be getting ready to escalate. And I think that, you know, a lot of these are well known. So I don't think that I'm really giving you anything, you know, too out there. But one of the things that I do want you to be aware of is that there's a difference between a tell and what I would call a cluster of tells. So a tell would be one piece of information. So if we saw someone that clenched their jaw, okay, well, that doesn't automatically mean that they're going to escalate. That's one tell, that's one piece of information. So we want to look for more information with regards to what their body language is doing. And so I've given you, a list here on page 4 of some of the things to look for. And the rooster stance is one of those where they're really showing more of an aggressive type of stance. And certainly, we've all dealt with people that are yelling or threatening. Maybe they don't want to comply with our policies or our rules. And I do believe that the eyes can tell us a lot. Depending, there are some people that just almost like are trying to look through you, and then there maybe the other end of the spectrum is there are people that that won't give you eye contact at all, and so once again I look at that as a tell, and I just look at the overall picture and kind of decide what I'm seeing, and then I'll go back to follow your gut as well. When you're in these situations, if your gut is telling you be careful or there's something not right here, you really need to pay attention and really be aware of what your gut is telling you. In those instances, it may be good to have someone else that would come in and be a part of the situation with you, or maybe even hand it off, depending how you're feeling with that. And then in your notes, I also wanted to remind you to be aware of your role in the conflict. So are you doing things to cause the conflict to escalate? And many times that could be tone of voice. And I would also go into body language as well, because to me, the hardest part of body language is that I can't see my own. And so I may be sending out body language cues that are causing the conflict to escalate, and I may not even be knowing it. Maybe I'm the one clenching, or maybe the one that I'm tightening up, and I'm just not aware. But many times I've been called out with my tone of voice. I don't know about you guys, where I've had people say, you're saying the right thing, but your tone of voice tells me that you're upset, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So, something to be aware of. I once again, I hope you'll use this webinar here as an opportunity just to reflect on yourself. And once again, look at the situations where conflict are happening. And then just look at yourself. Is there anything that you could be doing that might be causing this to escalate? And please do me a favor. Don't beat yourself up about this. Look at it as an opportunity to learn. You're learning about yourself. You're learning about how you're handling these situations. There is no such thing as perfect customer service, because customer service is situational. Situations constantly change. The environment is constantly changing. And there's no way any of us are going to be perfect. We're going to have situations that we wish went better. And I just challenge you not to look at them as failures and mistakes, and to look at them as opportunities to learn. And you know what? And you say, well, that didn't go well, and here's what I think I'm going to do differently next time. And do your best to let it go, and just don't beat yourself up. I know it can be hard sometimes because, we think we could have handled it better, and I get it. But at some point, don't we have to say, that moment's gone, and let's just do better in the next moment from there. If you've not read Verbal Judo by Dr. George Thompson, I would suggest you put that on your reading list. He's an ex-cop, and he shares these verbal techniques. He's also a martial arts master, and he combined them in his police work. And it's really, I think, a good book for us to look at techniques that we can learn, techniques that we can use that will persuade instead of tell, persuade instead of, thinking that we have to use more aggressive types of approaches. And so I want to share just a little bit of information with you from his book today. So there are his 5 universal truths. I certainly way agree with number 2 on the list. I'd be kind of interested in your thoughts on those 5 if you want to share those in the chat area. I am a big believer that people don't want to be told what to do. Some people find it demeaning. So, instead of telling people what to do, can we take a more persuasive approach? Can it be more collaborative? Because some people, when they're told what to do, they escalate. And it's more of a how dare you type thing. And people want to know the why. I certainly agree with number 3. And that's why I love the word because. If we are going to inform someone of a policy or a procedure or a rule, whatever it is, you don't stop there. You give them the because. And if at all possible, the because should be a benefit statement to them. So an example would be, we don't allow food and drink in the computer lab because of the damage that's been done to the keyboards, to the computers. And that has caused problems where people couldn't use the equipment because it was broken. So I love the because and the why whenever we can do it. I'm also a big fan of number 4, which is, if you can't give people what they want, give them options. And certainly I don't see the value in giving people threats, but give them options, and then give them some empowerment. So I can't waive all your fines, but here's what I can do. If you put 25 cents down, I can do this. If you do this, I can do this. And then, number 5, give a second chance. Overall, I agree, but there are some behaviors that don't deserve a second chance. And hopefully those are laid out in our code of conduct and the different things that are going on. But number 1 is, kind of the overriding, which is, I want to be treated with dignity and respect as a customer. I'm sure you do as well. And the people that come into our library, almost universally want the same. There are some people that come into the library that they're just problems, and I get it. And we're going to deal with them a little bit differently. But, that's the small percent. I really think people want to be treated with respect. And when we can show them that respect, maybe that's one of the really first steps to where we can bring down some of the escalation that's going on. So 7 things never to say to anyone is from the book. And I actually saw an article that was put out by this gentleman. He has this DTM, security installations business. And he kind of expounded on the 7 things to never say. And I'll just share those 7 things with you if you want to write them down in your notes. Number 1 is, hey, you come here. Hey, you come here. And as I'm going through these 7, I just want you to think about, number 1, how they feel as the receiver. And number 2, how you would react. So, hey, you come here. I could tell you I wouldn't react well to that one. Number 2 is one that we kind of all know is just a train wreck waiting to happen. And that is to say, calm down. What do people say when you tell them to calm down? I am calm. Or how dare you tell me how I'm supposed to act? So we're not going to go there. Number 3 is, I'm not going to tell you again. And a lot of emphasis on the word tell there. I'm not going to tell you again. Well, number 1, you should never put yourself in a situation where you are just telling people over and over again. So I love giving people a choice. And I'll share with you, it's from Steve Albrecht and his library security book. He uses the phrase, if you would like to stay in the library, you will need to do whatever it is that they need to do. I am not telling you what to do. I am giving you the option. So if you would like to stay in the library, you are going to need to wear a mask. If you'd like to stay in the library, you are going to need to social distance. Now, based on how you behave, you are going to let me know if you want to stay in the library or not. If I find that you are not wearing your mask or you are not wearing your mask properly, then you have made the choice, not me. So I love that one. That is, it gives the opportunity or the choice to the customer, and it is not said in a way that is meant to escalate or cause conflict. It's saying you've got the choice. And based on the choice that you make, will tell me the next step that I either need to take, or, you know, if you comply, then there are no steps that are needed to be taken. But one of the things that I've seen for years in our libraries is that we almost go into a babysitting type of role where, you know, you go over and you tell a group, well, we need you to keep your voices low. We need you to, you know, calm down. And then we go back a minute later. Well, you know, I'm back again. I'm telling you guys, you need to keep your voices down. We're babysitting. And you're the babysitter. So, you know, let's look at a different approach with that. Number 4 is be more reasonable. Be more reasonable. Well, if you said that to me, well, you tell me, how would you feel if I said to you, be more reasonable? Share that in the chat area. What's the comment here? I know I prefer to handle conflict with a desk. Yeah, I agree. You know, time and space are our friend in conflict issues. And what I mean by that is by having a desk or a cart or a table or something in between us, it gives us that time and space. If they're right beside us, we don't have any time and we don't have any space to react. So I think that's very smart. And to me, that's part of knowing our environment as well. Yeah, Julie, I agree. I am being reasonable. Or are you telling me I'm not reasonable? But can you see how both of those, you know, both of those responses are escalating? All right, number 5, because those are the rules. Because those are the rules. Well, back to what I said earlier, I don't want to be told what the rules are. And if you are going to explain the policy, not tell me, then give me the why. But just to say, because those are the rules, well, sure, I'm going to escalate because now you have taken a more assertive stance and I'm going to respond in kind. Number 6, I hope you never say this. What's your problem? What's your problem? So yeah, maybe they're acting out in front of us. Maybe they're yelling, maybe they're, you know, doing the threats of, I know the library director, or, you know, I know somebody who was on the board, or I'm going to go to the mayor, whatever. It's a power play. I get it. They're trying to use a power play to get what they want. But what's your problem is not the answer. And then number 7, what do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do about it? On the surface, that's not a bad question. But the way it's phrased says, it's not my problem. It's your problem. So I would look at how we could say that differently. What do you want me to do about it? As the person working in customer service, quite frankly, what I'd want you to do is I would want you to give me some choices. I'd try, what are you hoping I can do? How can we work together? I really like how can we work together. Whenever we can collaborate, especially in a situation that seems like it's escalating, once I can get them out of emotion, I would love that. I'm not sure what action you're looking for me to take. My only concern with that one might be they may not know what action they want. They just may know that they want their problem solved. Because a lot of times I find in these situations, it's so emotional that people really aren't in a cognitive or logical state of mind. And so a lot of times I don't know that they know what they want. It does usually stop them in their anger track. Good. Okay. And, if we can get them out of the anger track and get them into a thinking mode, then that certainly, may have some validity there. And once again, try these techniques, see what works, see what doesn't work. And understand that, because it's situational, that it may work one time and the next time, maybe not as much. So I've given you some verbal de-escalation techniques. This is on page 5 in your handout. And these are ones that have been proven to help to bring the energy down in a conversation, to de-escalate. Obtaining the name of the person if you don't know it is certainly one that can have impact. We find that a lot of people respond favorably to their own name, but also, I don't know if you guys wear name tags that have your name on it or just staff. I know there's a lot of concern in some library locations about having your name on your name tag. And I get it, and I'm okay with just a name tag that says staff. But introducing yourself, asking for their name if you don't know them, can certainly work with that. And I'm a big fan of listening skills and just how can we listen more effectively. So when you are in this situation, it's an opportunity for you to listen, to, I like to call it, put together the pieces of the puzzle. And sometimes I feel like we're detectives in this work. And so I've got someone who's upset in front of me. They're, going off on what their issues are. And I'm just like, okay, let's make it a game and let's put it all together. Let's do our best to figure out what it is that's going on and come back and clarify, ask, maybe a clarifying question or paraphrase back and, see if the information that you're getting from them is truly the issue. Because many times I find that while they're venting, we may not be to the core of the issue yet. And so by starting to clarify and starting to ask questions when they're ready, number one, it does demonstrate that you're listening. And I'll share a technique that I've used for years. And that is, I have actually taken out a notepad and a pen and have written down different things that they're saying. And I found that has had a real impact on people. It's like, wow, he's really listening. He's writing things down. And so that may be a technique to try when you are looking at some of these situations. My next one on the list, having to do with just slowing down and suspending judgment. And I do think this can be hard to do. You've got someone who's, really acting out in front of you, and it's really easy to look at this person and, and just say, what is wrong with you? Or what is your problem? But I'm going to suggest that that's not going to help you in solving the problem. It actually may throw off some body language or tone from you that may actually get into play here. And so once again, I'll go back to Covey talking about that, I can listen to a situation, I can be empathetic, And I can do so and be in a position where I'm not agreeing with what you say, but I am seeking to understand you. And I am seeking to figure out just exactly what's going on. And so slowing down, taking that time to listen, and then also just suspending judgment so that I'm not going into, what's their problem, what's their issue, what's wrong with them. As soon as you go there, it gets into judgment. And then the other reminder that I'll give you is the one that I was taught years ago, which is do your best to separate the person from the behavior. If we go into that person's a terrible person, we're no longer separating the behavior from the person. Their behavior could be that they're yelling and screaming and cursing. Okay, focus on the behavior, not that they're a terrible person because they did that. So just some different techniques you can use here. Listen for the reasons that they're upset. Do your best to get your point of understanding from their point of view. And then whenever possible, if you can paraphrase or repeat their words back and, ask if you do understand correctly what it is that they have going on. From there, I think we do have that point of understanding where we can start to really put it all together, do our detective work. Once again, remember the unspoken, and you may need to ask, is there anything else that is going on with this situation? And then the bottom one, I am learning more and more the power of silence and that ability not to interject. Certainly no customer, especially someone who's upset, once interrupted. But just that ability to shut my mouth. And especially there are times, for instance, once I have listened, maybe I have done some clarification, and we've gotten to the point maybe where I can give them some choices. I hear you, and based on the situation, we can do this or we can do this. Which one would you prefer? And I have learned the power of silence after you ask that question. Whether you count to 5 in your head, whether you count to 3 in your head, but give them time to think, give them time to process, and don't feel like you need to fill in the silence. Because I think that could start the escalation again. So look at silence as a tool that you can use to really positively have an effect on some of these interactions and what's going on. And then kind of Jennifer and some of you guys talked about some of these phrases. I want to understand what's upset you. I want to know what you are really hoping for. Okay, so now we're encouraging them to share more of what they have going on. And there have been times I've worked with a customer and I have listened to their rant and I thought I knew what they wanted. And I say, okay, great. So what I understand is you want this, and it's, no, I don't want that. And I'm like, oh, okay. So help me better understand then what you have going on. Once again, they may not be in a more cognitive or logical state of mind. And so, once again, they may not be telling us clearly what it is what they're really looking for. Be careful of making assumptions. So can you tell me more about that? Is that the way that it usually happens? Are phrases that we can use here? One of the challenges, I think, in these situations is that many times the situation is not new to us. We've had this situation before, and it can be easy for us to go back to, well, this situation happened before, so this is what the issue was. And I actually think it's one of the hardest parts of customer service, especially the longer you do it, is that how do you keep each situation unique? Because sometimes I think making assumptions can cause the escalation and can cause more conflict because they may feel like they're not listened to. They may feel like you know, that, oh, well, you know, you're not listening to me with that. So make sure that you get clarity before you go into different solutions. And then, you know, use a restate. It sounds like you weren't expecting that to happen. I'm careful with saying things like, I can imagine how upsetting that must have been. If you're going to say that, you need to mean it. And you need to really come from a place of empathy there. And especially if you had something like that happen to you. But be careful of, I can see a phrase like the last one, I can imagine how upsetting that must have been, could actually add fuel to them. So just be careful with that. But I do think it's perfectly fine to say, you know, you had something happen that you weren't expecting. So, you know, let's see what we can do to help you with that situation. And then I think a lot of people want to be validated with regards to, you know, they feel like it was important enough to come in and tell us. I think one of the things we need to remember is that many people, when they have an issue, they don't tell us. So there can be a great gift in people that do take the time to come in and share their issue. They may actually, you know, be telling us about some things that we have going on that we didn't even know that were happening. Or they may be reminding us of an issue that could be something that is not consistent, but, you know, it's happening. And, you know, maybe we need to look at it further as a department or, you know, a library. So I appreciate you telling me about the issue. I'm glad that we're trying to figure this out, because quite truthfully, I would be glad we're trying to figure this out. And many times I am appreciative that they're letting us know. And so that's kind of one of those things I have in the back of my mind when I'm working in these situations is, you know, what's the gift? What's the gift that they're giving us here? Are they really telling us something that's going to help us as an organization? You know, what a cool thing that is. Now, this is where I'm going to be sarcastic, but sometimes the gift is that they're done and they left because they were someone who just didn't want to be happy. They're someone who didn't want their problem figured out. Once again, I know they're out there. I also know they're the small minority, you know, but there are some people that they're just not happy. And, you know, all of our efforts, you know, we do our best, but I go back to, it takes two people to dance. And if they don't want to dance and they just want to be upset, then, you know, we did our best. And they didn't do their part to meet us in the middle. And once again, I see that as a very small part of the people that we work with. So some of the other ones here that are on the list on page 5, there's a theory out there that says if you get small yeses, it's easier to get them to the big yes. And so if you have someone who is angry about wearing a mask, then go for a small yes. An example would be, you know, mask, for you to say, you know, masks are something that, you know, that people are seeing as very, controversial. Would you agree? Yes. And so build on the small yeses. Next one I have there is don't use cliches. We talked about, you know, calm down doesn't work. And I put that in your notes just as a reminder, though those are just really, you know, not the best phrases to use. They're going to be greeted with more energy. They're going to be greeted probably with escalation. And the reminder there, do your best to take an empathetic approach. Instead of looking at a situation or a person and saying what's wrong with them, a different viewpoint would be to look at it and say, you know, I wonder what's happened to them that it's got them to where they're at today. Now, we'll probably never know what's got them there, but just understand it's a different non-judgmental approach. And it will show through in your tone, in your body language, and the words that you use. And then just consistency and courtesy is my last one there. You know, and I use the example of closing time. We've been having some closing time issues here in our library system where, you know, people don't want to leave, or they don't want to know, you know, the computers are being turned off, or, you know, and you give them all the warnings, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, just the reminder here that how we treat people at the end of the day is how we treat people at the beginning of the day. And that the people do deserve the respect. They do deserve that courtesy and the patience. And, you know, they deserve it until they don't. And, you know, if we have people that are not treating us respectfully, then we try to put in some of the techniques that we've talked about today, that at some point, there may be some people where, you know, the conversation needs to end and, you know, they need to leave because they're just not willing to cooperate and they're not willing to do what we need them to do. So I'm going to give you a little bit here on safety, because in these conflict situations, I think we do need to look at our safety. And I'm actually a big believer that you should know your environment. So if you are dealing with someone that is escalating, kind of as Jennifer mentioned, you know, are you looking at your time and space? And then the other one that I like to point out is, are you looking at your exit plan? If this really starts to go where your gut tells you this person is a threat, or your gut is telling you that, you know, there's something not right here, what's your exit plan? How are you going to be able to get away from this situation if indeed it does continue to escalate? So there's something called the OODA loop that is taught in law enforcement, taught in safety and security. And OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, act. I've given you kind of the layout there in your notes on page 6. So observe has to do with situational awareness. So you want to have an awareness of what's going on, not only with the person that you are with, but what's going on around you. Is the situation starting to draw other people to it? You need to be aware of that. Once again, I talked about your exit plan, your safety protocols on time and space. Those are all the things that you want to do and observe. You want to have a really good idea of what is going on, not only in front of you, but around you when the situation is happening. So orient has to do with how you're gathering the information, what you are looking at doing with regards to the conflict. And here we can lean on some of our past experiences, our past, you know, knowledge with different things that are going on. We're going to then decide what's our best course of action. So our best course of action is to offer choices. Our best course of action is to ask that person to leave. Our best course of action is to call someone to get help, to call a supervisor, whatever that may be. And then from there, we look at the action we're going to take and we put the action into motion. So I want to go back to observe with you guys. I am going to give you 15 seconds to look at this. And then I am going to want you to, in the chat area, to write down what all 9 of those items are. So you've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, time's up. So in the chat area, do your best to write down and put in the chat area what all 9 of those items were. And let's just see how observant you were. So I've got a red armchair, a green wheelie chair, a brown stool, a TV, a bathtub, a door, chair, door, tub, stool, table, window, 2 chairs, a TV, a window. I love the people that are doing like red and green. I never do that. I don't use that much detail. It's so interesting to see how you guys do this. Lots of knobby feet. Okay. a blackboard, a bathtub, large chair. Okay, I'll pull them up. Let's see how you did. I didn't see the blackboard. I wonder if that could have been the TV, maybe on that. So we had the red chair, the green chair, the door, the bathtub, the stool, the table, the bed, the TV, and the window. Okay, all right. Now I'm gonna take you to a little different level of difficulty. I will give you, and once again, you're in observe mode here, not to be writing, but just observing. I will give you 30 seconds. Okay, I'll give you 45 seconds. 45 seconds on this one to observe, and then I'm gonna ask you to make your list of what these different items are. And you've got 15 seconds. Okay, time's up. So I don't know if I should torture you and ask you to, write down everything in the chat area there. I probably won't, because that's pretty torturous. But when you look at your list, and I'll go back to the slide here, but once again, here's the components of the OODA loop that I have on page 6. My point in all of this, especially with this second slide here, is that I don't expect you to get all of these correct, but I do want you to understand the difference when we're talking about situational awareness of 9 items versus many items. To me, this is much more overwhelming. To me, there's a whole lot more that I'm trying to be aware of here. And I really think that this type of slide causes me to lose focus because it's just so much. And my hope is that in your setting, when you're dealing with these issues, you're not dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's, I think, 30 some items here. Oh, there you go. I mentally grouped them together as like objects. Good. That could be a cool technique for us. Thank you, Stephanie, on that. So the mental grouping together. Okay. So hope you had a little bit of fun with that. So once again, there's the layout of OODA. This really can be a good conversation for you to have, especially if you're a supervisor or manager attending this webinar. Share the information and talk with your group. I have made the slides available, so you can certainly do the observation things with them if you would like to. So on page 6, I also talk about environmental awareness. And I think it's really smart for us as an organization to look at our library and look at areas where, things that I call them hidden spots or blind spots, or areas that could be a threat to our safety. I just think are things that we should take time to be aware of. So is there anything around us that poses a threat to safety? Do we have props out there that, that are part of a display that could turn into a weapon, for instance? Another question that we need to honestly assess is, if we have a situation that's going on, is the threat big enough that, that we should stop working? Is there anything that you can do to safely reduce that threat? I just think those are really good questions. At the bottom of page 6, I also have the 30-30-30 technique. And that 30-30-30 is this. For 30 days, every 30 minutes, take 30 seconds to observe your environment. So once again, for 30 days, and that's to get you into the habit, every 30 minutes, take 30 seconds to do an environmental scan and just look at what's going on. Have a higher sense of awareness of what's going on in the building. And I know many of us right now, like in Haywood County, we're at reduced capacity. We only have patrons coming in the morning. Afternoon for us is still curbside delivery. So we certainly don't have as many patrons in the building, you know, that we've had in the past. But still, it can be really, number one, the 30-30-30 technique actually reduces theft. And it shows more awareness of the people in the building that we're aware of what they're doing. So once again, it's sometimes hard for me to remember every 30 minutes, but maybe if you set up some type of a timer or something to remind you, it really can become a very effective habit for us to use with that. Okay, I'm gonna ask you to fill out the questionnaire on page 7. And this takes what you did originally and then asks you to look at those situations that you identified or those key sources of conflict, and then to write down some techniques that you can use to counteract them and to help you to stay in control in those conflicts. So I'll give you a minute to do that, and I will go ahead and quiet out here. So go ahead and fill out page 7, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And as you're going through, if you'd like to list those techniques over in the chat area, you guys know I love that. I love to see what your takeaways were, or those techniques that you can immediately apply, as I like to call them. If you want to put those in the chat area as well, that's great. And then also I just put up the slide. If there were any other key takeaways that you had from the program, you can go ahead and put those in the chat area as well. But certainly my goal for you today was to have a couple of techniques that you learned today or were reminded of today that you can use to help to keep yourself in control. And then the bottom question, I put that in there because I think it's so important that we discuss the issues that are going on. And I find many times that we have these different reports that we can fill out, but a lot of times we don't. And an incident report or a behavior report. And I do hope that we start to use those more. I had this conversation again yesterday, and I'm going to throw it out there again for you guys. I think one of the great gifts of this pandemic for us as libraries is a chance for us to examine what behaviors we have allowed to take place in the library in the past, and to really look at that and say, do we want to continue to allow that behavior? I am a big believer that, and it's not only true in libraries, I see it, in retail and et cetera, et cetera. I just think we let the customer get away with way too much. I think staff gets abused. I think that we allow behavior we don't need to allow. And so I hope that as part of the reopening of libraries and part of the kind of re-understanding our role in what we do, that we look at behaviors that we've allowed and decide if we want to continue to allow them. And see this as an opportunity where we've had a break for many of us. Some of you I know have stayed open the whole time, but where we've had a break, and it's actually a chance to kind of retrain the customer on that. Because partially, I think some of the behaviors that we allow lead to the conflicts that we're dealing with. So a comment here, learning their name to make it more personal, the art of keeping silent while actively listening, keeping my body language in check. Yeah, that to me, that's the hardest one. Just because I'm so not aware of it. And so to me, it's just heightening that awareness of what's going on. It's been a good chance to really redirect simple checkouts to the self-checkouts and save the trips to the desk for more in-depth help needed conversations. Good. So another kind of redirect from the whole pandemic and how we're having to change with regards to that as well. I'm going to go ahead and just put up my last slide here, and please feel free to contact me. You know that I love to hear from you. Email tends to be the best way, but certainly there's my phone number as well. And thank you, Jennifer, for her comment about I have been and continuing to go through some pretty serious health challenges, but things are getting better. So thank you guys for your healing thoughts on that. And I will go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll turn it over to Vicki to end it out. So thanks, everybody. Please have a great day. Stay safe and well, and keep doing the great work. We make great strides and great differences in our community. And I know sometimes you guys don't know that, but you do. So keep up the good work. All right, Vicki, thanks.